What's going on, Spurs fans? This is your boy Steve from Stateside Footy, and it is another edition of the American Hotspur. And joining me today is a good friend of mine, and of course, you know him because he is the leader of the Harris Army, and of course, the entire Harris Army is under one banner with the Irish Hotspur. It is Dave Harris. How you doing today, buddy?
Yeah, do you know what? Having a few days away from Tottenham has been nice, but I'm also, really concerned at where we're at as a football club right now. I just see, and I've been sort of warning of it for a while. There's just so many bad decisions, one after another, that make the recipe of being relegated, and that's where my concern comes in.
Yeah, for me, I'm just happy that there's no match this weekend because I don't think I could really stand another weekend of disappointment. And it's amazing how emotionally invested I actually get with it. Even though that you and I are pretty much on the same page when it comes to this club, where we're actually at and the reality of the situation in which this club is facing. And yet time after time after time, piss poor decisions get made. And it just exasperates the situation. Thursday was point in case where, you're going up a team like Crystal Palace that is roughly almost in the same boat as us. They're a team that's right for the picking. And we absolutely step on our own dick in such a humiliating fashion that by halftime, the game is over. And, you're kind of looking at the situation and you're kind of wondering, okay, well, it's 3 up and 3 down for Igor Tudor. What's next? What's the answer?
It's difficult. Like you look at the situation now. I mean, look, let's start with the Palace game. I mean, it was absolutely dreadful, Stevie. Like, and what disappoints me is I actually thought he got his lineup spot on, but based if he was to play a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1, in effect, he actually didn't. He played Porro as a centre back, moved Archie Gray out to right wing back, and it let me down a little bit. And look, we went. You could tell it was almost set up to be a disaster with the amount of tickets that were still on sale right up to an hour before kickoff. The empty seats all over the place. You can see that fans have they've just lost all trust in the players, in the board, and everybody else. And you're struggling to fill out the stadium. And usually, when you see big enough teams go down, that's exactly what you see in the stadium, where the fans have just given up on absolutely everybody. And it's one thing I was hoping we wouldn't see, but you can't make people turn up if they're just not feeling it and stuff like that. At the end of the day, football is an escape from like real life problems and stuff, and that's why people usually turn up. But when football is almost your biggest problem, you're going to stop going, and a lot of people have stopped going because they don't want to give the Lewis family or Enoch, any more of their money and stuff like that. And it was almost set up to be a disaster. But look, we went 1-0 up, and you're thinking, okay, been a bit fragile so far, but we're in the ascendancy. Let's see what we're made of. Let's see now if that can sort of breathe some confidence and some life into the team. And let's see if we can go for the kill. And we didn't. Yeah. We ended up crumbling. I think, I read out a stat before the game that between 35 minutes and 45 minutes, we've conceded 14 goals in that period this season in the Premier League alone. Make that another 3 now off the back of the 3 that Palace scored in that period. It's now 17 goals in that 10-minute period before half-time. Then you also look at it, Tudor's come in and said, I want to be aggressive, go on the press. We replicate exactly what we've done under Frank. We just allow teams to pass the ball across the back line. And initially for the first 5-10 minutes, some fans be sitting there going, oh, but it's all right, they're not causing us problems. It's like, no, you don't understand what they're doing. They're settling it down. They're taking the motivation out of the crowd, the motivation out of the players. They're building their confidence, and eventually they're going to start going forward, and they're going to cause us problems. And it's exactly what happened. It's really frustrating. When you're at home, you've got to use that crowd to your advantage. You've got to go after the opposition, press the living daylights out of them. And we just didn't do it. Dom Solanke sat in beside the midfield yet again. What's the point? Even if you don't want to go man for man press, put Dom Solanke between the 2 centre-backs to cut off that pass. That way, then you can either press it to the right or press it to the left and get a box press on and either force them long or try to play through you and turn it over. But it's just these simple little things that we lack, the basics. And then as soon as we concede 1, we concede 2, we concede 3, and the game's beyond us. No ball, no mentality, no fight. Van de Ven is checked out. I mean, that guy, Stevie, You know, he got away with it for the first goal that was ruled out for his nose being too big. You know, at the end of the day, you look back at that one that was ruled out. He let your man run in behind him, reacted too late, and that's how he ended up getting on the ball and playing him through. Then you look at the goal that actually stood where he got sent off, the penalty. Again, exact same thing. Stood there, didn't realise your man went in behind him, realised too late, panicked, dragged him down, red card, gave away a goal, and then after that, we were absolutely done. Then you look at Tudor, makes a couple of substitutions then in reaction to the red card, brings on Conor Gallagher, a player that's not fit, that's bloody useless, and turns like a truck, runs like a truck, and then the exact same thing when he come on. You know, and it just got worse then. We absolutely imploded. And then same shit in the second half. We come out, we have a 10-minute spell where we go for it, come close a couple of times, and the game fades out. It's the exact same shit all season long. These players do not care. They've lost all fight. They've lost all confidence. There's no morale. It's all on the floor. And then you look at it and go, well, will they fight for us fans? Why would they fight for us fans? Mickey van der Ven has offered half of you out for a fight along with some other players. You know, then you go, okay, well, at least if they will fight for the ownership, why would they fight for the ownership? Romero's statement is a reflection of how the whole dressing room feels, not just how he feels in terms of, you know, battering the ownership all the time. So they're not fighting for them. Then you look at Igor Tudor. Like, he doesn't love the club. He's just here on a solo mission himself to try and keep Tottenham in the Premier League so that he gets more Premier League jobs while he's one of the man League, because the money as a Premier League manager is better than everywhere else, you know. And then you look at the fans, and we've also given up. It's a recipe to go down.
100%. And you know, the interesting thing about this is, you know, we heard some post game player reactions, and you know, at least Dominic Solanke had the balls to address the elephant in the room. Now, he didn't say anything that would give any fans hope, but at least he was addressing where we're actually at as a club, so he gives the indication that the players understand. One of the things that I absolutely hate, Dave, is like when Thomas Frank was like, I'm not going to talk about it. And then Igor Tudor's like, we don't say that word. It's like, no. Like, you have to understand that these are grown men. And they have to understand exactly the situation that they're in. This isn't about taking a piss out of the players as a coach. It's to let them know, so that they're reminding that there is still something to fight for. Like, there still is purpose in the season.
Are they that asleep at the wheel though, in general, that they're not aware of it? Why are they only aware of it now? We're 1 point above it. You know, where was this games ago when we only won 2 games in 17 under Thomas Frank in his last 17 games in the Premier League? You know, where was the awareness back then? I'm sick of it. Like, you know, look, look, we can say fair play, you know, that, you know, he's addressed the elephant in the room and they've had discussions in the dressing room. Again, it's all lip service. All I've ever seen coming out of this club from top to bottom is lip service. I look at actions on the football pitch. Dom Solanke has been useless the last 3 games. Came on in North London Derby, no impact. Against Fulham, didn't want to move. Practically stood in the same spot all game. I see players running with the ball. You're thinking, okay, Dom Solanke, run in behind. And what you do then is you either create the passing lane for someone to play you, or you drag players with you, which frees up space for the guy on the ball.
Yep.
Won't do anything. Stands there in his way, right? And then you go and look at the Crystal Palace game. Outside of the goal he scored, tell me what running that guy done all game. Absolutely nothing. You know, and it's the same with the board. You know, we had a transfer window there not so long ago, done fuck all in it. And then next thing, as soon as the transfer window's closed and season ticket renewals are up in March, all of a sudden, we're going to scrap the wage structure. We understand we need to do this in order. It's all absolute bollocks, lip service, horseshit. Start delivering on the pitch. Start looking at actions. I always say to Spurs fans, forget what PR comes out. Look at the actions, and that'll tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really just comes down to the fact that we have mentally weak players. And I hate to say that because, quite honestly, like, I like to give players the benefit of the doubt, Dave, because, you know, when you get to a professional level, regardless of the level you're at, it's because you've deserved to be there. And especially with these guys that get these kind of contracts, one of my biggest problems with it is the fact that obviously they just don't care. They have tuned out two coaches now, and of course there's players on this team that have been relegated before. They have been there.
Majority of them, Solanke.
Yeah, the majority. Yep. Most of, Yep. A lot of these guys have been relegated. A lot of these guys have been, personally responsible for getting coaches fired. And again, this is what's funny is like, I keep hearing this thing on social media where this is a Thomas Frank issue, or this was an Ange issue. It's like, whoa, pump the brakes and understand that we had a Champions League team 6 years ago. We were at the top of the mountain 6 years ago. And in 6 years, when players leave, we never replaced that goal production. We never replaced it with like for like. And in some cases, I don't think you really can, because I mean, how do you really replace a guy like Harry Kane? But that being said, they had hold on real quick. They had the ability to replace Sonny with another left-sided winger that could potentially equal that goal contribution. They didn't do it. They get rid of Brendan Johnson. Whether you like Brendan Johnson or not, he was our leading scorer last year. They shipped goals out the door. And this is what we have.
Well, look, it's something that I tried to warn about selling Harry Kane. I was like, look, you don't understand the void that this guy's going to leave. I tried to highlight, you're like, people go, oh, but it's just goals. Anyone can come in and do that. Well, we've seen that they can. Second of all, when I went and looked into his goals, it was the actual amount of equalizers or winners this guy was scoring. Big moments in big games to, put points on the board. And we let all that go right before the season started, which is absolutely mad. There's no plan in place to really sell him. It was all about just extracting maximum value for the guy rather than actually having a plan, realizing the type of player you've got, how important he is to this whole club, let alone the team, the whole club. He papered over so much scratch for this club in general, how good he was on the football pitch, how much he carried the team. No plan in place. They just go, it's grand. Harry Kane will go, some will fill the void. Son couldn't pick up that slack, because at the end of the day, what they didn't realize is it was a partnership. Kane fed Son, Son fed Kane, and they failed to realize that. Then they just go, well, it doesn't matter. We'll just leave it all on Sonny. Sonny's legs couldn't carry us anymore. And then all of a sudden let him go again with no plan, no replacements, leave it to deadline day in the summer to really sort of bring in your forward targets, and there was just a sheer oversight on how important goals are at this level, but also how hard they are to come by. You can't just sign any individuals and put them together and go make it work. You have to have a plan. You have to buy players that are going to complement each other. Right, this player can't do this, but if we bring in this player over here and he can, and they have all these other skills, they can play together and stuff like that. There's no planning around it. It's all just, stabbing in the dark all the time. Let's see what we can get in on the bargain all the time. That's why we're in this situation, quite frankly. We don't have the goals to get us out of it. We can all sit here and look at the back line. I think we'll all agree individually, Romero leaves Tottenham, he will go to a top team around the world. Same with Mickey van der Ven. Pedro Porro, Spanish international, will walk into another top team. Udogie, if we were to let him go, would be snapped up because he's a hot prospect. We'll go to another top team. But the reality is, we're basically just asking them to keep clean sheets and go and score goals now. You're asking them to do absolutely everything in this team. It's just been mismanaged completely. Selling Harry Kane and spending 50 million on someone like Brennan Johnson, half of your Kane money on a guy like Brennan Johnson down in the bottom of the Premier League, bringing in Solanke, firing down the bottom of the Premier League, bringing in Richarlison, firing down the bottom of the Premier League. And I warned about this years ago. We are bringing in relegation fodder players. We will end up going down there unless we start getting serious in the transfer window. And the fans are paying the price for neglect inside the club.
And some like myself think that Fabio Paratici was close because he was laying the groundwork for that rebuild and never really got the opportunity to really take that roster that he initially brought in to that next level, right? Because when you look at some of the signings, the Romeros, the VDVs, the Betancourts, it was like when you're looking at that team at that time, and it was at that point in time, it was like obvious that there was need for upgrades pretty much everywhere. Outside of Kane and Son, you're starting to look at it and you're starting to see the writing on the wall, and it's like, okay, cool, we're actually starting to bring pretty good players, and there's going to be a second level to this. Now, whether that was going to be an 80 million pound player, 100 million pound player, we'll never really know. But that being said, he never really got the opportunity to finish the project. He was suspended, and then the idea to bring in our current executive branch right now, and then all of a sudden you take the good work that was actually done and flush it straight down the goddamn fucking toilet.
But that was a big problem, though, Steve, because if you remember,
Yeah.
you had Gabbanini working under
Yep.
Paratici. And Gabbanini, if you actually go and listen to interviews he's done since he's left Tottenham, he was absolutely influential
Yep.
in getting Van der Ven in the door in terms of when he brought his name. He was sort of dismissed, only that he kept on banging on to them about get this guy in, you got to get this guy in. And eventually they listened to him. But when Paratici was suspended, Gabbanini wanted to take on that role. We should have given it to him. He was the one working under Paratici. Paratici could have advised him and help advised him and stuff like he was doing. But they chose not to give it to him, let him go, and then go and bring in Johan Lang. That's where the mistake went wrong in the recruitment department. If Paratici suspended, step up Gabbanini. Paratici can direct him, tell him what to do and stuff like that, and teach him along the way. But he knows what sort of recruitment we're looking at, what we're trying to do, and let him continue on the plan. But they didn't. They said, oh, well, no, Gabbanini, you're out. Bring in Johan Lang. And you look at where Aston Villa are now that they got rid of Johan Lang. When Johan Lang was at Aston Villa, if you look at the bulk of his recruitment, it was the likes of your Matty Cashes and stuff like that. But since he went and they brought in Munchie to help Emery, and the reason why they've done that is because they knew Johan Lang couldn't even get in the room to get half these players. They're bringing in like Vicencios on loan, big name stars and stuff like that. And they've kicked on. They're up there sitting, challenging for Champions League football now. And we're sitting here back where Aston Villa used to be under Johan Lang.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really what it comes down to, because at the very least, when the transfer strategy under Daniel Levy back in the late 2000s, early 2010s under Harry Redknapp, or even Maurizio Pochettino, you can look at the wage structure and be like, yeah, okay, cool, it's not good enough. We're not even remotely competing with the top 5 in the Premier League, but at least you had strong personalities like Maurizio Pochettino that actually had expectations when it came to players. And so if you're looking at a 20 million pound player and you're like, all right, there's that player's raw, but there's talent there. And under the right environment, we can build that player up to a 40 million pound player. And if we get rid of him, whatever the case may be. But at least you had stability within the club. And you actually had a director of football that actually matched the ambitions of your coach. You get what I'm saying? It's so out of balance now to the point where you actually had, and I realize this is going to sound crazy, but you had Ange Postecoglou, who was trying to actually build something new up to the standards of what Tadera is to do. That's what he was trying to accomplish. And you have a director of football that was playing completely, playing off of him or playing against him. Was it willing to match the profile of the players that he needed?
But that whole business model about buying young and looking to develop, that fans put up with that at White Hart Lane because they understood that they had to buy properties around the place to be able to, so that they could have the site then to be able to build this monstrosity of a stadium and stuff like that. So fans sort of accepted it, and it did. It took us to a certain point, right? And then Pochettino came in. He got rid of all the old experienced players that wouldn't run about and thought they were too good for this football club. Brought all these youngsters back in off loan, some up from the under-21s, put them out there, formed a team. And over these couple of years, he sort of let some go by the wayside, added some in. Not great. You didn't get top signings, by the way. Think about Ben Davies from was it Burnley or Swansea for little money? Same with Michel Vorm. Players like that, and sort of bulked out his squad that way. But the difference is, he worked with them youngsters on the training pitch. He guided them youngsters, That's what they need. Someone that's really willing to sort of guide them, almost like as a father figure at times as well, to be fair, outside of coaching and stuff like that. And he put his faith in them and they trusted him. But we got into the big stadium. We've had years of sponsorships, all this multiple revenues coming in from everywhere. And we were told the transfer policy will change. Once we're in there, we can then start paying the big wages. We can start paying the big transfer fees so that we can compete with these big clubs and not sell our best players to them. We get into the stadium and all we've done is sell our best players to them. That's all we've done. Carried on. And we went back to it. We're still continuing on the model of buying young all the time. Bergvals, Grays, people like that, But you're bringing in managers that need experienced players. They don't work with youngsters. Jose Mourinho is known for spending loads of money, bringing in the right quality, the right mentality, and going on and winning things. We didn't do that with him. Same with Antonio Conte. You know, same exact sort of style. Didn't do that with him. You bring in Ange Postecoglou. He's not a guy that
Again,
works with academies and
yep,
youngsters. He walked into
yep,
Celtic, he cleared off half the deck. They've got they've got all the best players in Scotland in their academy. Didn't use any of them. Went to Japan, brought in a few players and stuff like that. You know, you
same
bring
with
in Thomas
Australia,
Frank.
yep.
They don't even have an academy at Brentford. They don't even have an academy at Brentford. So you're bringing
Yeah.
in managers that are demanding certain quality level of players, and you're not giving it to them, and you're going to work with what we've got. But in order to work with youngsters, it takes a special type of manager. You look at Arsene Wenger at
Mhm.
Arsenal when he brought through a lot of them youngsters, you know, likes of your Henrys and stuff. But he guided them, he worked with them, he nurtured them. Same with Ferguson at Man United. It was their choice to go down that route, and they knew what it needed. At Tottenham, we're just not pairing the manager up with what we've got. So infuriating, man. Infuriating. You had
Yeah, I
all the
hear you.
talent coming through in the under-21s from the academy that have won trophies galore, which is unseen of in my lifetime following Tottenham Hotspur. Here in the academies picking up regular trophies on that basis. They've all been farmed out on loan. Couldn't even bring them back this January to give them their opportunity, even though this is the worst squad we've ever seen on a football pitch, you know, in terms of hunger, desire, and everything else. Couldn't even bring them back with all the injury crisis to give them their opportunity. And again, you're just not bringing in the right manager for what you've got. If you want to go down the route of bringing, you know, a young squad, you bring in a guy that has worked with youngsters, has a CV of developing youngsters, a team of youngsters going on and winning things. That's what you're looking at. But no, we can't do that. We mismatch the manager with the players, and then we sit here, the club sit there and they wonder why it implodes every 2 years, every year and a half. Because these managers can't take it any longer. They're like, you're placing the demands on me of being up here. But you're giving me a squad that's realistically down here, and you're asking me to bridge that gap. It's not possible. A manager is only as good as what he's got to choose from at the end of the day.
100%. Let me ask you this question, Dave, and this is directly your opinion when it comes to these players. Will these players allow a dude like Igor Tudor to lead them? Right now, we have about 9 games left. And me personally, I look at the schedule and I'm like, okay, all right, cool. We still have Leeds at home. We still have a couple games where we can still pull out points. Like, I still think that there are points out there that'll keep us up by the skin of the teeth, but make no mistake, we're in deep shit. But that being said, this is about the players at this stage. Like, you know, I keep hearing that they're going to let Tudor go and then it's going to be Harry Redknapp and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, whoa, pump the brakes. Like, number one, Igor Tudor was the right coach at the wrong time. I don't think what these players need right now is somebody, you know, I guess you can say like a drill sergeant like Igor Tudor. I just don't think it's like if this was back in November when they were still a top 10 team and the confidence was still in the group. Yeah, I'm sure they would probably be okay with a dude like Igor Tudor. Me personally, like you needed a miracle worker, somebody that's actually saved a team from the Premier League, kept a team up. Somebody that, you know, potentially has a soft hand for players that actually need a soft touch and those that just need confidence. But that being said, at the end of the day, I don't think this board is going to make a switch because I think they're afraid. I think they're scared to death. And, you know, what's going to end up happening is if this team gets regulated, a lot of people are going to end up losing their job because there's going to be at least a $250 million slash when it comes to revenue. And quite frankly, there's going to be a lot of players exiting out the door. It's going to be an absolute shit show. What this board absolutely needs is for this team to stay up. But that being said, it falls squarely on the shoulders of the players. But that being said, I think a lot of these players are mentally weak.
100%. But look, I think it all really started back in the summer, Steve, off the back of the Europa League, right? You know, you've got a squad that it was. We didn't know this at the time. It only really came out after Ange Postecoglou was sacked. But it was sort of unanimously agreed inside the club between the players, Postecoglou, Levy, and everything else that they would focus on the Europa League. So he achieved that along with the squad. There was a togetherness there from them, and they chose to sack him. Okay, granted, you can make the argument. It was always going to come to an end at some point once you start going after the fans like Postecoglou did. Didn't help his case. But if you are going to sack him, you're bringing a manager who has a history of winning things, who has a history of big clubs on his CV, you know, who has a history of being able to manage a fixture schedule alongside a European, fixture schedule. What did we go and do? Bring in a guy from the bottom of the league that has got knocked out of nearly every cup every single year in the first round, you know, brought them to sort of either avoiding relegation or mid-table security. And by the way, you look at where Brentford are now without Thomas Frank, with Keith Andrews, a rookie in charge. Really, sort of how good is Thomas Frank really needs to be questioned as a manager and stuff like that. And then, you bring in a guy that is all about then defensive play. And when you've got a defensive manager, naturally, it's all about respecting the opposition, this, that, and the other. So you completely flip the script. You have Postecoglou saying, you go out there, you be brave, you play the way I want you to play. We're going to play football the right way, on the front foot. We're going to go after teams, and stuff like that. And if you do make mistakes, I will take the flak. And that's what he done. That's what Postecoglou done in press conferences. You bring in then Thomas Frank. What's the first words he says? I 100% guarantee you we're going to lose games. I can tell you now, the most ambitious players in that dressing room, which is your best players, he lost them straight away with that statement. They're sitting there going, we're off the back of winning the Europa League. What is this guy's ambition then? What are we looking to achieve here? You're telling me I'm going to lose games. I'm a winner. I've got Europa League medal around my neck. You can point to the league form all you want, Tommy, but there was a decision made between us and the club. We would prioritize that. If we didn't, we might have had a better league finish and stuff like that. But so already you've lost the most ambitious and your best players in the team. You see that go on for as long as it did. They left it go on far too long. But what makes it even more worse is and the reason why they let it go on for so long is because the Lewis family are wet behind the ears in this situation. They're novices. They're not used to running a football club and making these cutthroat decisions when they need to be made. Football, you need to make your decisions very, very quickly a lot of the times. They don't have that about them. So they left it in Vinay and Johan Lang's hands. Now, them two Muppets are only in the job. They were never going to hold their hands up and go, guys, we've got it completely wrong. We need to sack Frank and bring in the next guy, because then they look incompetent. So, they left the footballing decisions in their hands. The board should have intervened long before it and said, guys, we can't let this continue. Look for a new manager. We're sacking Thomas Frank. They didn't do that. They let it go on to the point where all the players are bereft of confidence. This guy's coming in moaning about their fitness. How fit can he truly make them within the last 10 games of the season, really? How can he really improve their fitness if they're not fit by now? It should have been done back in October, November when the warning signs were there. And at least give him a chance, to be able to build up the fitness and everything else he wants to do. Left it go on way too long. But then when you do decide to sack Thomas Frank, as an ownership, you should really be able to have a good read on that squad. You should really understand, looking at them or calling your captain up and a few of the leaders, what do you need in charge right now? Do you need a drill sergeant, or do you need a guy that's going to come in and sort of butter you guys up, fluff your pillows up, tell you how great you are, and breathe some life and confidence into it? They went and got the drill sergeant, and it looks like it's a mismatch. It's now looking like this squad does need someone that's just going to come in and try and lift the confidence of the players, remind them how good they are and stuff like that. Tudor already made his last stand after the Fulham game when he said they can't run, can't defend, can't attack. Usually when a manager resorts to that in a press conference, it's their last sort of resort to really try and get something out of this squad. And they didn't react to it. So now they're left in a position where they've no choice but to go again. You can't keep allowing this to happen. At the end of the day, Tudor's come in. Haven't seen a change in tactics. Haven't seen a change in attitude. Haven't seen a change in performances. Don't look like winning a game at all. So you can't keep going on with it. Where we are, we have to gamble again. We are looking for quick fixes right now. So we can bring in the next guy. If that doesn't work, out him after 4 games. I'm bringing another guy until the end of the season to try and lift. That's where we are at right now, because they left Frank in for so long and it caused so much damage to this football club.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, I think I'm kind of with you right there, because we've had 3 games, three different set of tactics, 3 different lineups that produced absolutely nothing except for the exact same result, and it has nothing to do with Igor Tudor. Me personally, I just don't think that I don't think this was really a fit to bring in an Italian fire firebrand. Yeah, there you go, firefighter. Me personally, like this almost called for old school tactics, right? One of the things, it's like, if you're not going to bring in Harry Redknapp, at least give him a call and be like, all right, dude, we are trying our best to stay up. Who do you recommend? Who is your recommendation, right? Like, is there anybody out there that has experience in keeping teams up? Who is it? Is it you? Is it Sean Deitch? Then do it. then do it. Because I mean, listen, I mean, at this stage, who are you going to bring in? Like any big name is not coming in right now, not with the possibility of relegation hanging over their head. On the one hand, yes, it's like, okay, cool. If he comes in and he saves the club, yeah, he's going to be a hero. But if he doesn't, because he's working with a group of players that have given up and they understand that in just a couple months they'll be out the door because they're not going down to the championship. So what does it matter?
Yep.
But that being said, it's like, who is going to be available? And it's like, what's funny about it is I go back to Sean Dyche because he performed a miracle with Everton. He performed an absolute miracle when Everton was, I think Everton had a points deduction for breaching PSR. And they entered the season with like minus 12, something crazy, and it all but confirmed their relegation. And Sean Dyche proved a miracle with Everton. All right, do it again. Do it again.
I do wonder if Sean Dyche was sacked earlier, because I think he was only sacked after we announced Tudor. Would they have actually went for him at the time?
Well, you can do it right now. You can do it right now. He's out of job. Yeah, well, me personally, I don't know about Harry Redknapp or Sam Allardyce, but
I think for me, if you bring in a new manager for the Atletico away game and the Liverpool away game, you're not really giving that new manager a fair chance. I think, let Tudor take them 2 games, because we ain't winning them anyway. Let's be brutally honest. We're going to be absolutely eaten alive out in Atletico. We're going to be eaten alive by Liverpool like we always are. So after that is really when you should really make the change. Atletico then at home. Sunderland, I think you've got coming up. I think you've got Brighton coming up. A couple of other games Wolves. In there. Leeds, Wolves, winnable games for us. So that's when you make the change heading into that period for me.
Yeah, because for me, it's just about having a manager coming in that are going to put square pegs in square holes and keep things absolutely as simple as possible. And just letting this team,
Steve. I just want to see some tactics, some honest to God tactics. Thomas Frank employs zero tactics. Tudor's employs zero tactics.
I get it.
I want to see a manager that's going to send this team to actually press as a unit. I want to see a manager that pinpoints a weakness in the opposition and says, this is where we're going after today. Because this is what this needs. We can sit here and say, just set 3 of them up, let them play through them. Can't do that. We're not good enough.
Yeah,
find the weakness in the opposition, exploit that, attack it, and stuff like that. I just want to see some basic tactics being employed on the football pitch. That's all I'm asking for. Nothing difficult. If we bring in the next guy and he's instructing Dominic Solanke to sit into a mid-block in your midfielders and I start watching teams pass around the back line again and build their confidence, I'm going to lose my fucking mind.
By the way, if Diego Simeone loses in the round of 16 to Tottenham Hotspur, yeah, he's going to be he's going to be an available coach in the summer as well, too, because that probably has to be a sackable offense at this stage. But let me say it again.
He's done some job at Atletico. I think he'll be one that walk away rather than be sacked.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you on that one. But that being said, I gotta ask you this, because if they do decide to come down yet again to relieve Igor Tudor of his duties, that's it for Vinny Venkatesham and Johan Lang. You would have to believe that, right?
But they should be gone anyway.
For sure.
Success, they should be gone. The fact that they allowed Thomas Frank to go 2 wins in 17 Premier League games, when usually they'd be sacked after a run of 8 games, let alone fucking double that. They've got to be sacked anyway. The fact that they only brought in our summer transfer window up, we would have been absolutely embarrassed if Muani found a move, if Xavi Simons got his move to Chelsea. We only got them in last minute because they couldn't go anywhere else and they had already made it apparent they wanted to leave their parent club. So they had no choice but to come to Tottenham Hotspur at that point, which fluffed up our transfer window with the last couple of days to go. If they didn't happen, we would have been embarrassed. They would have been held culpable long before that. Then you go into the January transfer window. We gave Ange more players. We gave him, but it was a bad transfer window. The previous Januaries we had on Ange. It was even worse this time, this time around. So, based off everything they've done this season, they shouldn't be in a job. Johan Lang shouldn't have been in a job after the second transfer window, summer transfer window under Ange Postecoglou. The guy's sitting there talking about wanting to go and compete for the Premier League and for trophies, and they bring in Archie Gray, Dom Solanke, players like that who was never ever been up there competing for stuff. We're never going to be the players to take us in that direction. He should have been sacked then. It was evident. I pointed it out that summer. All the Ange fans, Dave, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. You're just fat. You just want to be negative all the time. This, that, and the other. Go and lose weight, everything else. I said, boys, you can keep saying that to me. The reality is, Ange Postecoglou is a miracle worker. He needs the right players to be able to go and achieve this. And
they wanted... Right, and Johan Lang was...
And you've got your manager saying, I want to win trophies, and you bringing in a load of youngsters.
Yeah,
and
Johan Lang was brought in. Johan Lang was brought in to revolutionize a new youth movement, and it went absolutely counter to what Ange Postecoglou was trying to accomplish. And I still say this, and I know that Razzle Dazzle 750 in the chat said a little bit earlier that he cultivated a losing mentality. It's like whoa, dude, pump your brakes. Like, understand, like, in that first season under Ange Postecoglou, they got rid of the world's best striker 2 days before the season, instead of doing that in July and giving them a month and a half of leeway to at least get a replacement in. They didn't do it. They waited till the end of the window for him to go to Bayern Munich. They end up with a left winger playing striker for a majority of the season with a roster that, if you ask me, was a mid roster. Like any other coach, probably that. Yeah, we finished 5th and we get Europe. And instead of bringing in the Semenyos and the Mbemos and of whatnot, we get Dominic Solanke and 3 teenagers.
I just don't even know why Postecoglou is.
And then he still wins a trophy. He still wins a trophy in the midst of an. By the way, we had the exact same injury crisis last year as we had this year, and the players were still on board, and they win a trophy. And momentum is heading into the summer, and Johan Lang pulls the plug.
But this has also been a massive problem this year. Frank v. Ange, and you've got people that would die hard Ange didn't like Frank and didn't want him to work out, and you've got people that would die hard Frank because they hated Ange so much. Realistically, both were never really good enough to take this club to the heights we needed to go.
I get it.
At the end of the day, Postecoglou, I keep hearing it. Well, it was Postecoglou that brought around the losing culture. No, it wasn't. Postecoglou has nothing to do with this season. This is our worst season ever. Postecoglou was sacked. And at the end of the day, Postecoglou didn't make the decision on his own to go for the Europa League and bin off the Premier League. He done it with Daniel Levy. Daniel Levy's the one with the losing culture. Postecoglou went and delivered the Europa League. He saved our season that season. Season before that, he finished 5th, despite fuck all help in the second transfer window, despite all the injuries and everything else. And at the end of the day, anyone that's blaming Postecoglou for what's gone on this season, it's just because you hate the guy that much. Let's be brutally honest. You absolutely hate him.
100%.
It has nothing to do with it this season. Blame the guy that everyone labeled as being a coach, a tactician. Frank. I didn't see any tactics. I didn't see any coaching. Oh, but guy that comes in develop players. I didn't see any players develop under him. In fact, everyone got worse. He left us 4 points, 5 points above relegation. Blame him. Blame the Messiah 100%. That everyone pumped him up to be. Don't blame the previous guy. The previous guy made the decision with Daniel Levy. And we all know that Daniel Levy is part of ENIC. We all know that ENIC are the ones that are in charge of setting the culture at this football club. They didn't do it. And I know Razzle Dazzle comes back and says, you should have been sacked, before the end of last season. But the reason why he wasn't is because it wasn't based on league form. They kept him in the job as long as we were in the Europa League. That's the agreement they came with. That's why he wasn't sacked.
Yeah, for sure. But that being said, even at that time last year, I was like, I don't care who your coach is. Jurgen Klopp, Pep Guardiola, Mikel Arteta, Luis Enrique, Diego Simeone, whoever, with only 11 to 12 senior players fit and your best players that are long-term injured, you're not winning any games. I don't care if you're the greatest tactician in the world. You're not winning shit. You're not.
Look, that first season we were lucky. You took out the club's top scorer for how many years running before that? Let alone up there nearly being the club's top assister as well nearly every season. You let him go the day before the window closes. Or the day before the Premier League starts. You're pulling your best player from underneath the manager's rug. You're pulling the rug from underneath him. And then on top of that, you're going to have crap transfer windows, crap January, crap summer, crap January. You're not helping the guy whatsoever. But look, I'm not here to defend Ange Postecoglou at all. I get it. He made his own bed by calling out the fans. But what I'm not going to do is blame him for what's gone on this season. I'm going to blame ENIC. I'm going to blame Vinay. I'm going to blame Lang. I'm going to blame Thomas Frank. And I'm going to blame them players. Here's what here's this season. It's like me turning around and going, well, this is all Jose's fault. This is all Conte's fault. Why? Nothing to do with it.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this question real quick, because relegation is actually 100% on the board until this team finishes above the drop, and we know for a fact. Number one, it's under no circumstances will Enix sell this club down in the championship. They're not gonna do themselves do the fans a favor by selling this team for half the value of what it's worth. It's like, yes, they'll lose immediate revenue for the drop down into the championship. But that being said, it's like, put yourself 6 months forward, Dave. Where does this club go from now until the start of next season? How does this shit come to fruition? I.e., like, what has to be done?
In terms of what, whether we get relegated or we don't, what we basically.
Yeah. If we get relegated.
Well, if we get relegated, forget about them saying they've got a 50% fucking clause in the player's contract, which, by the way, stinks of lack of ambition, by the way. Rather than put incentives to perform, hit certain targets, hit certain numbers, and win things, no, we're going to put this in here. We're going to put in relegation one, which you're almost putting it into existence, right? That at some point, this is going to be a possibility because we're clowns, so we need to put this in here to protect yourselves. But forget about all of that. Reality is, all your best players, all the highest paid players over 100 grand a week are all going to go. They're all going to get Premier League moves or league moves across Europe and stuff like that. We can sit here and go, Mwani shit. Guarantee you ends up at a big club around Europe. Sit here and say, have your problems with Romero. Guarantee he ends up at one of the top 5 clubs in the world. Same with Mickey Van der Ven, players like that. They'll all move on. And you would argue as well, what's their incentive to stay up? Van der Ven and Romero. I think Van der Ven has what, 3 years left in his contract. Romero's just after signing a new one. If we stay up, the club ain't letting them go anywhere this summer. Whereas if we get relegated, they can go wherever they want. So there's no incentive for them to really muck in and keep this club up. And people can go, well, it'll be a stain on their career. No, one will end up at Real Madrid. One probably will end up at Atletico Madrid, and they'll go on and win things. It won't be a stain on their career. They just do what everyone else does. It's all of everything that's gone on there is everybody's fault inside the club, from the ownership and everything else in the structure. That's what everyone does when they leave this football club. It didn't harm Conte. It didn't harm Jose, and it's certainly not going to harm some of these players walking away. So the reality is they're going to get top moves, and we're going to be left with the likes of your Papa Matasars, your Bergvals, your Greys, your Spences. Be lucky to hold on to Vuskovic. All the big clubs will be sniffing around him this summer. You might then bring
hold on to
the
him.
likes of your Lancashires, your Donleys, your who else we got out on loan? Your Dorringtons, players like that. That's what we're going to end up with in the championship. And if we're lucky, they might bring in 1 or 2 veterans of the championship to try and steer this club along. That's what we're going to end up with.
Because I got to be honest with you, I actually think this might actually be a good thing. Don't get me wrong, for as disastrous as a relegation would be financially to this club, that being said, it also has the ability to completely wipe the slate clean. Because Daniel Levy's gone, okay, great. Now you can actually wipe the slate clean with certain when it comes to your transfer, when it comes to your transfer teams, when it comes to your recruitment teams. You can actually bring in a director of football. I keep hearing the name Dougie Friedman. You have an opportunity to bring in a coach that, again, I'm hearing reports that Mauricio Pochettino will still come back even if the club is in the championship. And when I look at the youth of this team, the bottom of the roster, the Lucas Bergvalls of the world, the Archie Grays, the Luka Vuskoviches, and by the way, they'll hold on to Vuskovic. 100% they're going to hold on to him. The Mikey Moores, the Yangmin Hucks, maybe even a Matisse Tell stays. Like I look at it and I'm like, that potentially is good enough to come right back up with that young crew, especially if they bring in some decent veterans, decent championship veterans. That kind of comes right back up.
I hear what you're saying in terms of it allows us to clear the decks. But even if we survive, we can clear the decks over one summer if there was an ambition.
I agree.
Do so.
I agree.
I'd rather do that in the Premier League, and I think
without a doubt,
I do understand what you're saying, but I think what people aren't taking into account is look at the clubs that have struggled to maintain Premier League survival after coming up. The amount of them that go down, because when you come up from the Championship, we're going to have to sort of rejuvenate a lot of that squad again and stuff like that. And, you're going to have to put up with some, just avoiding relegation, mid-table. I've already done all that.
Yeah, but the difference is,
I've already been through all that. I don't want to go through that again.
Yeah, but the difference
I think
is
people underestimate how hard it is to really get back to where.
Yeah, but this isn't Leeds playing at Ellen Road. This isn't championship what was it? Luton playing at Kenilworth Road, where you don't have the resources in place, you don't have the infrastructure in place. Where when you do come up, you're still going to have the wherewithal to be able to add, even more so to the point where you're not going to be a yo-yo team.
Do you back now that spend that money? Or do you think they'll adjust their budgets accordingly to where we are in the league, like they've always done?
Yeah, that's a very good point. We
have all the resources in the world, but they don't use them.
Right.
And that's why we are where we are. And I do not back them to be able to use the resources right down in the Championship, even though we've got a load of young talent loaned out in and around the academy, in and around the first team. They'll still fuck that up. They will absolutely fuck it up. We'll be one of them teams. We'll end up down there for decades. Anytime a big game comes around, everyone always mocks us for having a history of bottling. Anyone back us if we got into promotion final that we're guaranteed to win that and come up? I don't.
Yeah,
and that's where I don't want to get stuck down in there. It's a very dangerous game to play.
I
agree. We can't sit here and moan about the owners and how crap they are and that they're at fault for this. And then on the same breath, sort of sit there and go, yeah, but they'll use the resources to pull us back up quickly. I can't do that. I don't trust these guys at all. I don't want to put that fate in their hands. I'd rather clear the decks in the Premier League, to be brutally honest with you.
Oh, I agree. It's just I come back to this. I come back to the same overlying point is the fact that I don't think these players give one shit one way or another. Yep. I really don't. Right? Because you have to because when I'm looking at this and I'm like, all right, well, yeah, Christian Romero plays for a World Cup winner. You have Mickey Van de Ven and Xavi Simons that plays for a very solid Dutch national team, high level performers. You have Dominic Solanke that plays for England. We have pieces on this
played
team.
A World Cup final.
And Mwani played in a World Cup final. And it's like, listen, man, these guys don't elevate to national teams if they're scrubs. These guys are high-level performers, and you're losing to Crystal Palace. You're losing to West Ham. And I get it. I get the injury situation, but you're still available. You're still available, and you're still having embarrassing losses after embarrassing losses. And it's like, it's easy. For me, it's easy to muck up after Tudor, after Frank. Yeah. Were they the solution? Obviously not. It comes down to the players. Last year, we just were benefited from the fact that 3 teams were just drop dead dog shit last year, and we were able to be 15 points clear of the drop, even in 17th place. And it's like these players. It comes down to these players and whether or not they actually really whether or not they actually give a damn.
They don't. I think at one point they did. I think you could see Mickey Van de Ven did enjoy himself here at one point. Same with Romero, players like that.
Yeah.
But I think, when you're a player and you're in that dressing room and you see the form you're in, you need help in a January transfer window and the board don't give it to you.
Yeah, I agree.
You're going to lose all fight. You're going to lose all hope. You're like, fuck me. They're going to want, everyone's going to question where's mine, but where's his? This is where we need the help from him now. And he didn't give it.
Right.
I'm giving up, and that's just normal. If you're in any job and you need stuff and your bosses aren't giving you what you need to be able to help, with your job and be able to, make it easier on you and stuff like that to do what you need to do, you're going to, at some point, you're going to hand in your P45, right? You're going to go, look, I can't fucking do this. I'm handing this in. I'll go and work for a boss that will give it to me. Right.
Apathy sets in. And you get dejected, right? That's it, and it goes with any other sport where you can make trades and get new players in. It's like a shot in adrenaline in the arm, especially especially if you bring in the right caliber players to surround some of them. It's like all of a sudden there's a new confidence. These players are like, okay, cool, maybe we actually do have a shot. Yeah. And it just didn't happen. It just absolutely didn't happen. And from that standpoint, I'm kind of looking at this like who's the next one.
You also look at it, Stevie. How many of our best players, top players, have had to go outside the club to seek treatment?
Yeah.
Again,
Scotty
it's
Munn.
another reason why why would they fight for the club? What are the club actually doing for these guys? What are they actually doing bar paying them a pay packet? And we can sit here and say, you get your wages, you should perform. That was enough back in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. Nowadays, players are looking at rehab, fitness, facilities, incentives, everything else. There's a lot more that comes with it. And when the club aren't giving them all of that, no wonder why they've checked out. No wonder why they've given up. No wonder why they don't care.
Yeah, last year,
these are things that these players
Christian Romero went to his national team for treatment. You wonder if James Madison's at St. George's Park with the national team getting treatment. You know what I mean? Or if Kulusevski's in Sweden. You know what I mean? It's like yeah.
Look at Romero came out, after one of the international duties. North London Derby coming up. You think, okay, club, get a plan together, get these players back, as early as possible so that we can gear up, even in terms of preparation, fitness, readiness. The players aren't bollocks from traveling, this, that, and the other. They don't. They leave the international teams put the jets on, and they're getting onto these planes, and they're going, okay, well, where is Lionel Messi? Where's this player? Where's that player? Oh, their club put private jets on for them to get them back for the game on the weekend and stuff. It's all these little things that add up, and if you're a player, then why would you fight for them any longer? They can't even give you the basics that other clubs are giving players. What is your incentive to fight for these people? And that's why we're absolutely doomed this season, because they're fed up with fighting for the ownership. They're fed up with asking for help all the time. And by the way, the reason why they're asking is so that they can go and win. And if the club don't want to help them do that, then at some point, you give up. I'm sorry, you give up. You keep getting beaten down enough, you give up eventually. You stop having fight.
And now
across the world.
And you just hit it right on the head, because what happens if this team comes out on Monday or Tuesday in the Champions League against Atletico Madrid and goes balls to the wall and actually plays a complete 90 against Atletico?
They're doing it for themselves, though, aren't they?
They're doing it for them. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. It's going to drive fans batshit crazy. Why can't you do this against West Ham? Why can't you do this against Ford? It's because they don't give a shit. They don't give a shit.
Premier League is where they're going to get their move, or Champions League is where they put their eyes in front of the big clubs.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. They're in that position where they're looking out for the best interest of their career, not the club. And I guess this kind of gets into that discussion about whether players actually give a shit about the club. Because 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, you actually had club pride. Like when you came to Tottenham Hotspur, you understood exactly what the club was about. You wanted to come here to be a part of the history. You wanted to be that next wave of players that are going to bring this club to glory. And it's simply just not a factor in modern football anymore. You go to a club that gives you that gives you the biggest paycheck, that gives you the best exposure, because eventually you're going to make a move. If you're good enough, you're going to make a move to one of the top 5 clubs in the world. I.e. Gareth Bale, Luka Modric, Harry Kane.
You see, back then, back in them days, though, especially 80s, 90s, 2000s, early 2000s and stuff, like, the reason why they cared is because there was a massive understanding that the clubs were living off fans' money. The fans were paying for TV, so that money gets recirculated into the clubs. They're relying on fans buying merchandise, fans selling out the stadium. They still rely on our income coming in. Don't get me wrong, because you got full stadiums, businesses, people want to attach their name to that. They want to put their brands in front of that and stuff like that. When you don't, is when they're starting to walk away. You've already seen a report there a couple of days ago. But the reality is, with so much in football, when you look at the TV revenue, it's absolutely astronomical now. When you look at we've got the Skywalk, we've got the abseiling, we've got the F1, we bring rugby to it, we bring boxing to it, we bring
National Football League.
So they're not as dependent on the fans' money anymore. And that's why there's so little respect. That's why now they don't want to do fair. Before, it used to be fair pricing for absolutely everything because they really needed us. Now, it's just like, well, if you can't pay it, tough tits. You know what I mean? This is the way it is. We don't need your money. We've got sponsorships for our sleeve now. We've got sponsorships for one toe on our sock now. There's sponsorships for absolutely everything. There's so much more money coming in, and these players know that. So that's why they don't have to show that same respect to fans, because before, you should disrespect any fans, you're out the door. But they can get away with it now because they're not solely reliant on that money as once as they used to be.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it's just the American sports business model, Dave. And this is the same thing that, the Premier League ended up following. Because if you remember back in the 90s when the NFL signed their first massive TV deal, ticket prices started escalating at that point as well too, because it was at that point it was icing on the cake, right? The reality is, to believe it or not, the reality is Tottenham Hotspur can actually have no fans and they would still make a profit. Ticket sales and season tickets are just icing on the cake because the television money and the sponsorship money is so lucrative that they meet their overhead and then some, and then they use their ticket sales as as that buffer for the remaining percentage of their overall revenue valuation for the season. It's like that percentage that goes into the transfer budget actually comes from ticket sales and some of the sponsorship revenue, but the overhead for the stadium and the training ground, all of that shit comes from TV and their largest sponsors. Now, granted, sponsors won't attach themselves if there's not fans in the stadium and performance and things like that, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, to your point, right? They all survived the pandemic, right? You know what I mean? Without having fans, squandering money on the club and stuff like that. But the reality is, they were all begging for fans to come back because they were starting to accumulate debts. It was dead. It was soulless inside there. Players were begging for fans to come back in and stuff. So they need to start realizing the value of fans to football. Football is absolutely nothing without the fans. It's the same with anything. If you don't have a good fan base, it's absolutely a non-runner. It's a non-goer.
Yep.
And the reality is, the bigger and better sponsorships is based off how passionate your fans are, how committed your fans are. Everyone wants to put their name in front of that. If you're selling out week in, week out, the abseiling, a lot of that money comes from fans. The Skywalk, a lot of that money comes from fans. F1, bit different, but fans. But the reality is, where they used to respect fans and used to be like, we need them, we depend on them. To your point, they don't 100% depend on us anymore. So now they say it's gone from we need you to, well, you could watch it at home, but it's a privilege to watch it live. So we're going to put premium on everything now. And that's what you're seeing. But at some point, it will come back. A lot of these people have to apologize, come begging to the fans again and stuff like that. And I'm just biding my time.
Yeah, because what ends up happening if this team gets relegated? 100% they're going to come.
They'll be screaming for us to come next year. Come on down. We've got a little kid's goodie bag for you, scarf. We'll even give you a free jumper. Get down to the stadium, all included in your match day ticket. You watch how it changes because they will still need it more so in the championship. They'll need to sell out that stadium nearly every single fucking home game next year. So there will be a massive U-turn in terms of please come down. We need you. We're begging. Oh, Skywalk, €10 today, bargain. You'll see all that.
Dave Carl Slim Blue, aka Audio Artisan. He's a really good guy. He says, has there been much reported in Ireland regarding Mason Milia, or do you have any inside info you can share? He hasn't seen much written about him. The last I heard that he is with the first team, but he's dealing with injury. That's just what I heard.
Yeah. No, look, when we first signed him, I did warn everybody, don't get excited. You're not going to see him, from that January to the rest of the season. You will not see him in and around Tottenham Hotspur. The reason being, the League of Ireland, in terms of the league he was playing in, it's run all the way over the summer. It's run from, I think around, what is it?
March to September, March to October. Yeah, it's like Major League Soccer schedule.
All the way through to like October, sort of November. So he would have had no time off. Then also you've got to take into account, you see how much, you look at some of the Korean lad and the Japanese and that we've signed, the Japanese lad and that. We haven't seen any of them either, and the League of Ireland is an even bigger jump in that regard, because you look at the League of Ireland, despite having some clubs now performing in Europe, a lot of them, they don't have a training complex. They don't have gyms. They're having to go into gyms that they're hiring out and stuff like that and all that sort of stuff. Half of them don't even own their own stadiums and shit like that. There's no infrastructure. Now, when Tottenham did sign him, they were trying to work with him in terms of a fitness plan and bulk him up and stuff like that to bridge the gap, so that when he did come over, it would make it a little bit easier. But I remember I told everyone at the time, I have seen countless of stories of guys leaving the Premier League at his age, going to Premier League clubs, and then never making an appearance. And they're either being farmed out on loan, or at some point they get fed up with it because they're used to playing senior football. They can't handle going back down to academy level, and they scream to get back across the pond back to a League of Ireland club. And the reality is with Melia, then when he arrived, they gave him a bit of time off because he was after completing a full season. Then when he came back and was getting into it, he suffered a back injury, and he's been out with that now for quite a period. But Mason Melia was never signed to be the answer. And I remember speaking to a guy, and this guy sort of does have good connections in around the Republic of Ireland national teams in general. Speaks to a lot of families of players and stuff like that. And I remember him saying to me that, Mason Melia was a guy that was highly tracked across Europe. Man City really wanted this guy. They had a plan. They brought him over, said, look, our plan is to bring you into Man City, send you out, I think it was to Belgium or something like that for a year or two on loan, develop you, and then bring you back. He didn't want that. He wanted his next move to come over and go into a first team. And Tottenham promised that, even though they were never going to be able to deliver that in the first place, which is absolutely mad. But I can tell you now, Mason Melia ain't going to come into the Premier League and score you goals that we need to pull us out of relegation. He's nowhere near that level yet in terms of Premier League level. League of Ireland is different. Don't get me wrong. He's got a good touch. He's a big guy. He knows where the back of the net is. But League of Ireland is a complete different standard to Premier League. It's almost amateur football compared to Premier League standard. He is nowhere near ready to come in and pull us out of this problem.
Would you say that he's like on a League 2 level?
I would say League 1, maybe Championship. Put him out there and see how he gets on. Like don't get me wrong, he's a good talent. But how many other
the Belgian Pro League is
you look at Matisse Tell, he's not good enough to pull us out of this. Bergval, Archie Gray, despite having a couple of years seasons of Premier League underneath them, they're still a talent. They're not. They haven't developed, or they're not a guy that you can rely on week in, week out right now. So you can only imagine the step up that Mason Melia has to make.
Imagine where this club if Scott Munn actually did his job. If this team actually had a medical department where we can get players back out sooner rather than later instead of what we currently have. It's been absolutely rock bottom at this club. But by the way, Man City had the right approach, man. Putting him in the Belgian Pro League would have actually been a good shout. That's a very good developmental league, and a very good step up for a guy like Mason Melia. A couple of years out in Belgium, when you bring him back, he probably might be ready. But that being said, it's kind of interesting because I think you might have told me that he doesn't want a loan move.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't. The whole reason on him selecting his club, coming out of the League of Ireland, coming over to England, was all about the plan of bringing him into the first team environment, and basically his agent is his uncle, but he used to play for like Stoke and teams like that. He's got a good career of football behind him, so he's well aware of, football and lies and everything else that goes on. The reason why he turned down Man City is because he wants to come over and go into a first team rather than having to go out on loan here, there, and everywhere. He doesn't want that. He wants to be in the first team environment and fight for his spot. And that's what Spurs offered him. That's why he signed.
Yeah, but that being said, it's like you have to be realistic. As a player, you have to be realistic about your next steps, right? I mean, you would have to understand that you're not going to see game time at the Premier League level, coming from a place like the League of Ireland. Like the standard operation is probably a loan move for a year or two.
Well, if you're him, you look at the amount of injuries Tottenham have carried, the fact that they thrust Bergval in there, your Archie Grays,
right.
You're sort of looking at it and going, well, this is if I get in there, if this continues, this would be my quickest route in, if you know what I mean. And I think that might have played a part. I don't know whether it did or not. But if I'm him, that might have played a part in my decision also.
That's a very good shout. He asked again, do you think Melia is ahead of James Wilson, the young Scottish lad we brought in this January?
No, I don't think so. Look, Mason Millie has got a lot of experience. You know, he's scores goals, got a couple of goals in Europe, has played in Europe as well for St. Pat's and that. But look, any of these youngsters coming in, even James Wilson, none of them are ready. The reason why you're seeing Tottenham now go after all these youngsters and bring them in is because if you bring them in and you put them in the academy and they're in there for a certain number of years, when you go to sell them on, that is 100% profit in terms of setting off against your financial fair play and everything else. And that's why you're seeing all these clubs do this now. It's not a model in terms of, oh yeah, this guy is going to be class in 2 years' time, this, that, and the other. It's not what they're doing. They're bringing them in, throwing them into the academies, and then selling them on for profit. Even if they sell them on for 5-10 million, that's still 10 million. That sets off the financial fair play and stuff, which then gives you bigger scope to be able to go and sign your bigger players. And that's what these clubs are doing. It's actually just a business model now, rather than bringing in a guy because you believe in him. That's why they're doing this.
And quite honestly, they should be doing it because, obviously we don't necessarily have a history of selling on young players to pad the lower ends of the transfer budget. So from that standpoint, I actually don't mind it whatsoever.
Like a lot of people question the amount of money that Man City spend, and I know they've had their maneuvering around the sponsorships money. But if you actually go and look at the amount of academy players that they've sold on over the years and stuff like that, is insane. They sold Bazunu to Southampton for 30 million. You know what I mean? And stuff like that. So people moan about the money they're spending, but they also top it up by selling off a lot of their academy products. And a lot of clubs are going down that model. You look at the way the Premier League's played now. Everyone's playing
and Chelsea,
trying to do what Pep is trying to do. Everyone's trying to copy City, and they're doing the exact same with this business model.
Yep. You look at Liverpool and City, and they're doing the exact same thing with some of their youth as well, too. 100%, without a doubt. Before we go, Dave, I guess the last question is between now and the end of the season, what do you think? What do you think happens?
Do you know?
I know what your heart says, but let's take emotion out of the equation here.
Yeah, look, taking the emotion out of the equation, I look at it, right? Is there anyone in that forward line that's going to bag us the consistent goals we need between now and the end of the season? No. Is there anyone in that forward line that's going to create a consistent amount of chances between now and the end of the season? No. So that's a huge concern. We're leak goals at the back. Everyone thought the high line was the problem underneath Ange Postecoglou. Turns out it wasn't. We've leaked more now than what we ever did underneath him. When you're shelling goals, that's also a massive problem. You look at the midfield, non-existent. We don't have the key things on the football pitch to be able to win enough games of football to be able to keep us up, in my opinion. And when you look at the likes of Forest, West Ham, who are showing that fight, who are picking up results, and we're not. And then you look at like the managers, changing manager, not seeing anything different. You look at the ownership, absolutely naive, made the wrong decisions all season long because they're not experienced at running a football club. You look at Vinny and Johan Lang. Do you really think they're in and around there trying to get into people's ear? Come on, we got to do this to a higher standard. We need to survive. And I don't either. I think they're just happy-go-lucky around the place. Thanks for the wage this week. Caponara Sunday, no problem. See you there, shit like that. I don't. So to be honest with you, I think we're going down personally. And I tried to say it a long time ago with Thomas Frank, you need to cut this quick because this is going to get drastically worse and worse and worse as this goes on if we don't. And I just look at it, I think we left that far too late to really rectify and pull ourselves out of this trouble. So for me, I honestly think we are going to go down, Stevie, yes. And it kills me to say that. Absolutely kills me.
I would agree. And it doesn't necessarily matter if you make a manager change. It all comes down to these players, and it comes down to whether or not they actually have skin in the game. And when most of these players understand what a relegation actually is going to mean, a move out of Spurs, then 100%, they're just going to get paid, and they'll be in a different shirt next season. And so from that standpoint, I'm kind of in the same boat. But that being said, it's like there are ways where maybe we can put a good lineup out there and hope for the best. But at the end of the day, the way that I look at this is you're absolutely right. It's like, is there anybody right here that's capable of getting on a hot streak and scoring goals? Maybe Richarlison, because he had a little bit of a purple patch earlier this season. I think he had four. Chances. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's like 4 and 5. And then you're asking Xavi to be the facilitator without wingers on this team. It's like, Yeah, we're going to get Kudus back and we're going to get Bergfall back. That might help. But at the end of the day, we're dealing with players that have been in relegation scraps before, that have been set down. That quite honestly,
we're
they're
also
just here for the money.
We're also outrun by every team we play against.
Yeah,
outrun us more. And half of the battle in football is your fitness and your ability to be able to run. And again, that scares me. You look at the manager questioning the fitness of the squad. That also scares me. There's nothing here. There's nothing positive to grip hold of and go, if we can hammer down on that, we've got a chance. Nothing.
Yeah.
That Palace game for me was do or die. You win Palace, you give yourself a bit of momentum. You look at the likes of Wolves, Brighton, Leeds, and that coming up, Forest. You go, might be able to, off the back of that, there's a bit of fight there, a few goals, might be able to pull enough points out of here to steer ourselves away. I said to myself before the game, if we don't show up and we see pretty much what we've seen previously, this team ain't going to survive. Because I tell you what, the last game we won in the Premier League was actually Crystal Palace away, just after
Crystal Palace away. Yep.
And they were in free fall. The manager wants out. All the best players want to leave. They've all done what they can at Palace. They all want out. And you can't beat them. They beat you 3-1. Every other team has found it easy against them this season. Bar us.
Yep.
We're fucked.
Yeah, it sucks, man. It sucks that next season, the likes of Preston North End and Stoke City will be on our schedule. It burns me that Coventry City is going to be in the Premier League next year. Middlesbrough is going to be back in the Prem next year.
And we're going to be what their owners have done. Took them from fucking, the bottom of the English pyramid, and they're on the verge of breaking into the Premier League. And the thing is, they haven't sat there moaning about how much it's going to cost, by the way. If anyone's watched their documentary and followed it on Disney and Disney Plus and followed their rise, I watched every single season, every single episode. It's how much is it going to cost? No problem. It needs to be done because this is the benefit out of it in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
With us, we are cutting corners left, right, and fucking center. And there's more incentive for them guys walking into a club like that to cut costs. And by the way, they built a massive stand and redone that stadium and everything else, alongside what they've also done in terms of investment, in terms of wages, transfer fees for managers and players to pull them up the divisions and stuff like that. So do you know what? Although they get a lot of stick, fair fucks to them. There's no excuse for fucking Enoch who's had Premier League money and European money for God knows how long. No excuse. At the end of the day, it comes down to ambition. They walked in there with ambition. We want to go to the Premier League, and they nearly delivered on it. And they were willing to sacrifice money, even if it didn't balance the books and stuff, to be able to take them there. You look at our ownership, zero ambition, and that's why we are where we are. Thank you, Enoch, you cunts. Sorry, I can't help it. I hate them. That they're driving me mad.
No, and what's so ironic is when you look at the turmoil that Sunderland was in when they went down in 2016-17, and then they had back-to-back relegations, and they were essentially in the English wilderness for 8 years. They get a new owner who stabilizes everything, who invests, and they stay up. They come back to the Premier League, and then they stay up. And, it's going to be interesting to see what that journey entails as well, too, because it doesn't look like Sunderland is going to be that team that's going to be content on being a mid-table team. It looks like Sunderland just might be that team that's going to slowly spend and get themselves into a European spot or chasing a cup. That to me is the biggest insult, because you're absolutely right. We've had so much time at the Premier League level with the resources at our disposal, and we got so goddamn close, and we twisted. We didn't stick, we twisted, and now we twisted ourselves into a position where we have nothing but losers.
Yeah,
fighting for our Premier League life. It's gotten this bad.
Oh man, I don't even know what to say to you at this point. Like, I wish we could sit here and have conversations, going,
yeah.
But you know what? This player looks like he's got it in him, and this, that, and the other. And some positive discussions. But I mean, what is that?
I wish we were talking about like we were 6 points off of a Champions League spot. You know what I mean? With the remaining schedule, it's like, okay, well, we have 9 points, 9 to 12 points that we can push ourselves into a Champions League. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just like, Like this
Oh
is,
man, you're in a bad state.
oh man. So what is on tap with the Irish Hotspur for the next couple days?
To be honest with you, Stevie, I'm taking the rest of the evening off tonight. I'm taking tomorrow off. I'm not looking at anything Spurs related. I'm not even looking at anything football related, to be brutally honest. I'm just going to watch movies, play some games, spend some time with the missus, take myself away from it, come back with a fresh head Monday, build up to the Champions League game, and let's take it from there. I've also got a nice chicken satay on the go in my slow cooker, so I'm going to, when we finished here, I'm going to go over, give it a quick stir, see how it's getting on.
Oh shit! You say you have the right plan. As a matter of fact, I think I'm probably going to do the same as well too. Although I will say that I do have an MLS live stream coming up either tonight or tomorrow night, because the obviously the Major League Soccer season has started, and me being me, obviously I have to gloss over the Seattle Sounders. That's just how it is. So from that standpoint, the MLS live stream will be back this weekend. So at least there's that on deck. So please make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and hit the notification bells. Hook a boy up.
Nice. Any major signings to the MLS this year, Steve?
Yeah, actually. So Inter Miami brought in a former Tottenham Hotspur, Tottenham Hotspur left back in one Sergio Reguilon. He is now in Major League Soccer, and another former Tottenham Hotspur forward came to the league. One Timo Werner is now in Major League Soccer, and he's actually hit the ground running in Major League Soccer, like I thought he would. How
are Inter Miami getting away with all these marquee players? Because I thought you were only allowed so many per team.
Yes, we have a salary cap. That is very true. So of the 8 incomings that they had, 4 of them were frees.
But
4 of them were free transfers.
Still there though, like
they still have Messi there, and they Jordi Alba retired, Sergio Busquets retired. And so that freed up, I think that freed up a DP spot, and they brought back Tadeo Alande, and they brought in one I think he was a striker for for Monterrey. They actually had some pretty big signings. They were able to finagle the roster spots to get them under their salary cap. But yeah. So that is obviously our premier team here in the United States, Miami. But the interesting thing about this, Dave, is I understand the fan anger towards a guy like Timo Werner. He never should have came in to begin with in the first place. But the fact that you're bringing in a striker to play a wing position, a position that he's never played in his career, it was never going to work to begin with anyways. But whether or not he has a European career is irregardless, because I thought if he came over to Major League Soccer, he'd be a 15-goal scorer, just because defenses really aren't that great here in the United States. And sure enough, I think that's probably going to happen. And it's actually kind of a nice story for him, considering his career had stalled out completely.
Yeah, look, and I think with Timo Werner, I think his big problem is at one stage he was banging in goals. That's what got him his move to Chelsea, right? It's just like confidence is a massive thing sometimes. Some players, their whole thing is on confidence. Once that goes, they're never the same player. Like sometimes it's not just all on talent. Sometimes confidence, can be crazy. And I think that's Timo Werner's big thing. But I think, you move to Chelsea as a striker. I think, it's a bit of a cursed club in that regard. Fernando Torres went there. Couldn't hit a barn door. Werner and how many other strikers have gone there not being able to replicate what they've done at other clubs and stuff like that. So if you are a striker, don't go to Chelsea. Always sign.
Well, I mean, it's not even just strikers as well too, because especially the way that Chelsea operate, you have to come in hitting the ground running. Like there is no wiggle room. No. There is no time to get adjusted. You have to perform. Yeah. And like if you remember, Kevin De Bruyne went to Chelsea.
Yeah.
And failed, and he had to go back to Germany to get that move back. Mo Salah was there. Christian Pulisic went there and had to get away from Chelsea because it wasn't going to work. Right. So it's like, Timo Werner was one of many that went to Chelsea and it just didn't work out. So from that standpoint, I'm happy. I'm actually happy that he's getting at least a little bit of a lease on life, because I still remember his run with Red Bull Leipzig the first time around. So there is a player in there.
Yeah. Well, let's see if the MLS can unlock it.
Lastly, Vicario or Kinski?
Do you know what?
You got nothing to lose anymore.
Look, the reason why Kinski hasn't been given an opportunity this year is in the first international break this year, Football London printed an article basically saying that, and it was actually missed at the time. Everyone just sort of went off into the international break happy because we had won a few games up to that point. But
Right.
they actually printed an article saying that Kinski had regressed behind the scenes at Tottenham Hotspur and he's nowhere near in contention for the number one spot. And that's why Vicario is stuck in goals all season long, because there must be some point to it. You also look at Kinski. Look, Vicario has to be moved on in the summer, no doubt about it. And I am actually at the point
100%.
I would take him out the team. I think you're talking about bottle mentality, holding your nerve. He's the first one where his nerves go every single game. It's either a kick out that's gone out into the stands, a poor touch, an underhit pass, a save that he should have made, or something that should have been routine. He makes look difficult, and he just sets off everyone else's, and that then just transcends itself right through the rest of the team. You know, so for me, I think he does have to come out, but I would put in Kinski. I think Kinski had his opportunity. I think one of the biggest areas he's lacked was shots. I don't think he was used to the pace or the power of the shots of the Premier League and the rate they come in at across Europe compared to what he was playing with Slavia Prague. I think he was real caught out by that. And I don't think he's the answer either. For me, the one person I would actually look to give a go is Brandon Austin. When he had a run last season, he didn't really make any mistakes. So for me, he'd be the one I'd put in there.
I will say this, that number one, the sample size last year, I don't think it was enough. Everything you said is 100% correct, by the way. I do believe that the pace of play definitely played in a factor, but his first game in his Spurs shirt was the North London Derby. I think he had a match at Liverpool, and I think he had a match against Aston Villa in the FA Cup. Not exactly the softest landing coming into the Premier League. And then Vicario came back, and then he was relegated back to the second position. But that being said, also consider the source of this, right? It's Thomas Frank that's doing the evaluation. I think you and I have both cleared up the fact that he doesn't play youth. He doesn't play players that are green unless he absolutely has to. And we saw, like in Champions League games, at this point when injuries were at such a peak, he had no choice but to play youth players because he had to round out a bench. And so guys like Dane Scarlett got to look. Callum Olawasesi got to look. You know what I mean? But that being said, when it came back to the Premier League, those kids were nowhere to be found again, right? So from that standpoint, the evaluation process is coming from a coach that does not play youth at all.
Yeah, no, look, I get it.
Yeah.
But then why hasn't Tudor? He's brought in a goalkeeping coach, and clearly the goalkeeping coach made the decision there.
Because now they're in a relegation fight. Now they're in a relegation scrap, and you got to try to at least do it with your best players to stay up. Fair. You know what I mean? Like, so from that standpoint, I understand why Tudor's doing it. But that being said, it's like at some stage you have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
At some stage you have nothing to lose. And by the way, like relegation or not, accountability goes a long way. And if you have a goalkeeper that literally can't wipe his ass with his left hand, you have Antonin Kinski, who that's the thing. It's the unknown.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's really kind of the unknown. But I wouldn't play him against Atletico Madrid or Liverpool, but against Forest or against Leeds.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have nothing to lose.
Look, I agree. I think I'm one of them. I think the fortune favors those who's brave. And I think if something's not working, I think why not change it and give it a go? Look, whether Kinski's post time will tell.
I have no problem with Brandon Austin either. Like he's been around the club for so long anyways. I think it was at the Newcastle game last year where he got the call.
Yeah.
Newcastle at home, he actually looked pretty good. All right. That's going to do it for us. I want to thank Dave for taking your time out of your lazy Saturday. I'm interrupting the chicken in the crock pot.
Well, I wasn't lazy, lad. I was at the gym shopping. I had a few things I needed to get done today, so I certainly wasn't lazy. But no, look, it's not lazy from here on out. But I've had fun. Thank you very much for having me on. And I did retweet it and put it up in the post on YouTube. So if there's anyone that has come across and hasn't hit that like or subscribe yet for Stevie, please do.
Yep. And then for those that are tuning in and just experiencing Dave Harris for the first time and like him, the contacts for Dave are in the description of this video as well too. You can find him at X at the Irish EY, and of course here on YouTube at the Irish Hotspur. So those links are available in the description of this one. So head over there. Not only hit the like and subscribe buttons and the notification bell, but if you want, pick up a membership, because I guarantee you guys will not be dissatisfied. Him and Jack are one of the best Tottenham YouTube channels available right now. And every time you listen to him, I swear to God, dude, it's absolute gold. That's why I try to come on pregame shows as much as I can, because I love being a part of the conversation. So from that standpoint, and from that standpoint, show some Dave some love.
Appreciate that, guys.
All right, guys. Yeah, absolutely, man. Take care, guys. Have a great day. By the way,